When someone tells us the actual truth of their lived experience, outside of whatever society prescribes, our shoulders relax a little. We might even feel seen. Welcome to the first episode of Première, Personne, a podcast about vulnerability and deep listening. I am your host, Brune Smith. This is a podcast where we learn new ways of listening to one another by hearing from guests who, each in their own way, create spaces for vulnerable storytelling. Spaces that allow you and me either to tell a story from our lives or to hear other people's nuanced emotional truth being delivered through story. My guests and I will explore what those spaces can look like through different mediums and in different areas of our lives. Mediums include live storytelling shows, my favorite, but also writing, film, apps on our phones, sharing circles, and more. And different areas of our lives include entertainment, work, healthcare, mental wellness, activism, themed events, school, the internet, and more. Whatever the medium of our choice, here's why it is crucial that we all have access to some kind of brave space that is designed for first-person storytelling. When we are in those spaces, whether we're the teller or the listener of the story, the parts of ourselves that we may have kept in the shadows up until that point, or dismissed altogether as lesser than, those parts get to see the light of day. They get to be reflected, acknowledged, and they get to belong. We get to belong exactly as we are, which means we're going to feel like we can easily connect to other people with all of who we are. Only then can we truly show up in our own lives and in the collective. If we want to be part of an ecosystem that is inclusive, generative, and thriving, fostering belonging has to be at the heart of it. This is why I'm on a mission to help multiply the ways in which we can own our personal narrative, tell our story, and listen deeply to one another. To start this podcast, I thought I'd give you some context for who I am and why I'm here. The podcast is called Première, Personne, which means first person in French, my native language. So in this first episode, why don't I tell you a story? Actually, a story within a story. I want to give you a content warning that this story mentions potentially triggering subjects which are mental health, suicide, and terrorism. I promise to be mindful in my delivery, but if this sounds like too much right now, maybe skip this one or save it for a moment when you feel like you have the space for it. And I'll talk to you in our next episode with our very first interview. Whatever you do, please take care of yourself. It's a Wednesday night in the late summer of 2018 around 7 p.m. I'm on College Street in West Toronto and I'm pushing the door to the brewery. The place is bustling. My palms are extra sweaty. I'm not here to meet anyone for a drink. I'm here to go to a storytelling show in the side room where, for the first time, I'm going to be one of 6 people who are going to go on stage without any notes and tell a true story from their lives. Me, the baby of a Paris suburbs upper middle class family who would always look to her 2 sisters and her brother to decide what to do. The 34-year-old whose French culture tends to judge people who talk about themselves and see them as egocentric. The woman who, up until she moved to Canada the year before, never dared to share her feelings beyond what she thought was expected of her. I had always thought my life wasn't worthy of attention. Whenever acquaintances asked me what was new in my life, instead of talking about myself, I would mention whoever I had hung out with that week and start talking about that person's life. I'd always felt unrelatable and separate from everyone else, but not nearly as much as after the events in the story I'm about to tell on stage tonight. I pushed the door on the left of the bar and entered this dark room where 50 folding chairs face a stage lit in blue lights. People start settling in. I say hi to the few people I know while still rehearsing my story in my head. The show starts, and after the first two storytellers, the host calls my name. Brune Smith, everybody. I don't know that I'm breathing, but I must be because I walk onto the stage and into the light under a round of applause. The mic is too high, it's in front of my face, but I'm too nervous to take the time to adjust it, so I just lift my chin up and I start. Here's the story I tell. In September 2015, I've been living in Paris for 9 years and I'm desperate to go live somewhere else. At that point, there are many things I love about Paris, like its fantastic music scene, like the fact that I can go dancing in funk and hip hop clubs every week and go to a ton of concerts. But I'm also really worn down by men on the street randomly asking me to smile or to say hello back, and by everyone in the city being on edge all the time, including myself. I need to find a more peaceful environment, so I go to Montreal for a month to see if I like it enough to move there. I only allowed myself to book the trip because I feel like my eldest sister, Manon, is doing a bit better. She's a young mother to a 1-year-old daughter. She's struggled with her mental health for a long time, and over the previous couple of years, she's had bouts of psychosis, and she went to mental health hospitals a couple times. But now she's back home with her baby, and things are looking up. I spent the whole month of September in Quebec, and Montreal completely wins me over. It is peaceful but exciting. There's an atmosphere of down-to-earth creativity. They have great concerts and festivals. People don't rush. They offer genuine smiles. When they accidentally push you on the subway, they apologize. Men on the street don't look at me with insistence or ask me anything while I'm on my way to buy groceries. I want that life. So while I'm in Montreal, I look for a company who will hire me, and I find one. I tell them I'll get there in 3 months. The day before I fly home to plan my move, I get an email from my mom. She says she can't pick me up at the airport like she had planned because Manon isn't doing so well and she needs to be there to help with the baby. I'm used to this. A big part of me is worried about my sister. A smaller part of me complains that my needs always have to come second. And another part of me tells me I shouldn't complain because I don't have the struggles that Manon has. I fly home on a Tuesday, and on the Friday, I offer to babysit my niece because my mom is going to take Manon to a psychiatrist's appointment around 6 p.m. When I get to her place, my sleep-deprived sister has become the shadow of herself. She walks out the door ever so slowly without looking at her daughter in my arms. My mom looks at me with worry in her eyes and says, "See you when we get back." Around 9 p.m., they still haven't returned. I figure Manon is going to be admitted to a mental health hospital again. I'm hoping she receives good care. At 10 p.m., I finally put my niece to bed when my other sister, Violette, walks into the apartment. She doesn't live close by. She looks at me and says, "Manon did something stupid. She jumped out of the psychiatrist's bathroom window on the first floor. She's in the hospital." I'm thinking, 1 floor above ground, she must have tried to escape and must have broken a leg or something. It's bad. But Violette goes on to tell me that the doctors have run every possible test, and there's nothing they can do. Manon is brain dead. I'm waiting for my head to compute and send a shock to my body, but it doesn't. My body feels the same, my breathing is the same, but the air in the room doesn't make any sense. I just stare blankly at Violette while my brain fails me. She adds, "The doctors said it's a matter of a few hours until Manon stops breathing, and all we can do is wait." So Violette and I wait. We talk, and we don't. At one point, we decide to lie down on a big mattress that's on the floor. We stare at the ceiling in the dark. Around 2 a.m., we get the phone call. Our 35-year-old sister has stopped breathing. A week goes by. 2, 3. My friends rally around me. Sometimes I'm swallowed by extreme, unidentified feelings. Other times, my everyday life seems unchanged. I eat, I sleep, I brush my teeth. I cling to the fact that at least outside of my family, I can trust everything else to follow its course, and I'm still very determined to go to Montreal soon. 5 weeks after my sister's suicide, it's Friday night again around 9:30. I'm in my studio apartment near Place de la République with my friend Mary. We're having chips, hummus, and red wine when her husband calls. 3 terrorists are now inside one of my favorite concert halls, Le Bataclan, just a 10-minute walk away from my place. They're shooting at the crowd. We look up the news feed. 4 bars and restaurants have just been hit in nearby neighborhoods where over 30 people have been killed and more injured. There have also been explosions outside the National Stadium north of Paris. Dozens of people I know can potentially be in any of those places. I feel like my eyes have stopped blinking. All my senses are on high alert. I mark myself as safe on Facebook and check on my friends by text thinking, who am I forgetting? Sirens are blaring nonstop. On the live feed, the number of casualties is rising by the minute. 42, 57, 75. My body's in my apartment, but my mind is there in the crowd of the Bataclan, waiting to get killed. My spine is on the brink of disintegrating. Shortly before midnight, the events are still unfolding. Who knows when or if this is going to end? I tell Mary, maybe we can lie down. I pull out the 2 small mattresses that make up my couch and also my bed, and lay them beside one another on the floor. I turn off the lights. We stare at the ceiling in the dark to the sound of sirens, still checking the news feed every other minute. Sometime around midnight, it's over. 130 people have been killed. Over 400 people are injured, a lot of them critically. The next morning, as I walk to a friend's apartment that's even closer to the Bataclan, I'm scared of every passing car. Every loud noise is a threat. Violent death is no longer just in my family. It's on everyone's face. It's on the sidewalks. It's in my bones. After a couple of days, I feel lucky in a way that feels very wrong because no one I know directly was killed that night. But some of my friends lost friends of theirs. The sirens keep blaring for days until they slowly fade out. One morning, I'm in the shower and I hear them again without paying much attention. When I do notice them, I realize that they were actually only happening in my head. For comfort, I try to talk to some people about our common experience of the night of November 13th, but They're confused because I didn't lose anyone that night, so they tell me I'm in shock because of my sister's suicide, not because of the attacks. So now I'm confused as to why my brain keeps replaying that night, why my body feels like it has 1,000 holes in it, and why I feel like anyone I know, including myself, might die at any moment. So I stopped talking about it. I keep getting ready to move to Montreal. But a couple of weeks before I'm supposed to get on the plane, I face the truth. I'm in no mental state to leave everything behind and rebuild my life somewhere by myself. I still very much want to go, but I need to be around my family and to learn how to be me again. In the spring, I'm still too frail to articulate anything to a therapist, but I figure I should do things that make me feel better. Dance floors and concert halls don't seem like a good idea anymore. So I look for a personal singing teacher, and I find one. Week after week, she teaches me how to listen to my singing voice, to notice its shapes, and to notice how it carries everything my body contains, even without words. By doing all of this, I start paying attention to the range of my feelings. In the fall, I start thinking about Montreal again. I reach out to the company who offered me a job the first time I was there, and sure enough, they offer it to me again. I know I need to pace myself, so we agree I'll start on the job 6 months later, on May 1st. In February, I find a great therapist and I finally start talking. In March, I'm emptying my studio apartment when a friend recommends someone who's offering life coaching sessions at a low price to complete her certification. I still feel weak and heavy. I'll take all the help I can get. When I meet with her, she asks me what I want. I say, I want to feel lighter when I board that plane to Montreal, but that feels impossible. But in 6 weeks, she helps me find my way to do just that. During one of our sessions, she asks me what I want some details of my life to look like once I am in Montreal. I hadn't thought about much beyond getting on that plane. Thanks to her, I dare to say out loud that once I am in Montreal, I want to start writing, and I want a big mirror in the bathroom. On April 28th, 2017, I board that plane with a suitcase full of clothes, my computer, my guitar, and a coffee mug that Manon gave me. In 2 days, I find an apartment with a table facing the window where I can write, and in the bathroom is a big mirror. I roll my suitcase inside the apartment, close the door behind me, and as I stand in the middle of the living room, I look around me, and for the first time I have this thought. I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. This is where I end my story on the stage of the Burdock Brewery. People applaud and cheer as I step off the stage. I'm not sure what just happened. Purple hues are glittering around in my head, and a rush of feel-good hormones is flooding my body. People look at me with warm eyes, some of them teary, still clapping. I feel like a lifelong constraint has lifted off my shoulders. Now it's intermission, and the few people I know congratulate me, which is a big relief. Most of them didn't know that story, or at least not all of it. And as everyone gets up for the half-show break, something happens that I would never have expected. A stranger in the audience walks up to me to thank me and asks me if they can give me a hug. I gladly accept and thank them back. And then another person comes and does the same. And another one. I can see on their faces that they need the hug as much as I do. It's the first time I've experienced instant, full-body, mutual empathy and connection between strangers. And it's the best feeling in the world. Over the following days, I have 5 big realizations. Number 1, it sounds obvious to me now, but contrary to what I've believed my whole life, these people didn't have to have lived the exact same experience to be able to relate to me in big or small ways. I will never feel separate again. Number 2, sharing a story we need to tell, as long as we are being vulnerable and mindful of our audience, is the opposite of egotistical. It is a generous act, one that can make people feel seen, understood, and connected. Just like deep listening. Both deep listening and storytelling are healing for both parties. Both need one another to exist, and that alchemical duo is my definition of magic. Number 3, now that I have seen that taking care of myself can lead to being of service to others by sharing my story, it's easier to consistently care about my own well-being. These days, whenever I experience something tough, I say to myself, I'm in the part of the story where I haven't figured out yet how to get on the other side of it, but I will figure it out and I'll receive help along the way. Number 4, the events in that story I told on stage no longer occupy my whole brain all the time like one diffused and gooey mass, like they used to. Now they're localized. They're concentrated in just one small part of my brain. It freed up so much mental space for new things, for new life. Being witnessed by a community literally changed my brain structure and chemistry. It was incredibly healing. Number 5, if I didn't know up until recently that I can tell my story and that there are spaces made specifically for that, surely there must be other people on this planet who don't know either and who might benefit from it. So, a year later, in 2019, I had a very weird idea. I was taking a course on Zoom with people from all around the world when it hit me. I could produce and host a monthly storytelling show live on Zoom and finally allow people who didn't have access to shows in their city or country to experience its healing magic. I called the show Bodies of Stories. I produced and hosted it online for a year and a half with storytellers and attendees from all over the world. Last year, I selected 20 of the stories told on the show by fantastic storytellers from different countries, and I put them in a book. I wanted to recreate the experience of the live event on the page. You can find the book on Amazon, and I'll put the link in the show notes for you. It's called Bodies of Stories, 20 Vulnerable Stories Told Live Online. That experience of telling that first story on stage in Toronto transformed me so much that today I help organizations foster belonging through storytelling workshops and storytelling events. And I help individuals tell difficult stories on stage, in a book, in film, or any other way they feel called to tell it. So, okay, now you know that my favorite avenues for telling personal stories are storytelling shows and writing, but yours might be different. And maybe you're not ready to tell any story, but you want to hear from other people. This is why in all our next episodes, I'm going to be interviewing amazing humans who have created different spaces for vulnerable storytelling. And if this episode piqued your interest, I know you'll get a lot of inspiration from the ones to come. So make sure you subscribe and follow the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Did this episode make you think of anyone in your life? If so, I would love for you to send it to them. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also take a screenshot of the episode and share it on social media. Thank you so much. One last thing. As you may have gathered during this episode, there is no teller without a listener and vice versa. This is not a monologue, it's an open conversation. So I want to hear from you. Whether you'd like to react to any part of the episode or share a story of yours with me, or tell me you don't know how to find a story, send me an email. To email me, just go to my website, experiencenarrative.com, and send me a message through the contact form. I'm the only one who reads them. I answer every single message, and I'll be so happy you reached out. That's experiencenarrative.com. Scroll down the page and write your message in the contact form. See you in our next episode with a guest who, if you know her, you're going to be ecstatic to hear from her again. And if you don't, you're going to be so thankful you get to discover her, her wisdom, and her work. Thank you for listening deeply. I'll talk to you soon.